there was some of the brothers, I think the older ones, that were like, let's kill him. And
Yeah. But they pussied out and they just put him in a hole and left.
yeah, they dumped him
They're
in
like,
a
well, we
cistern.
didn't technically kill him. I mean, I appreciate I love their nuance back. It was great. They had like the real, like, they were very nuanced people. They didn't see things black and white, and they're like, well, we didn't actually kill him. So I respect that.
It's like what the Mongols, and they didn't shed royal blood, but they would like roll the prince up in a carpet and then trample him with a million horses.
Yeah, they're like,
They would build a deck and eat lunch on top of you while you screamed in agony. Hello and welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Casey.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Jeremiah.
And I just spent the entire weekend working at a farm show. You fellas ever been to a farm show?
I don't know, like not a farmer's market, right?
It's like a Comic-Con for people in overalls.
Oh boy.
So like, wait. Farm show. It's like where people showcase farm equipment and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Is there like a pig tying competition there? Like does 4-H have a big presence?
They just
4-H
rope
did
up
have
a bunch
a
of cops, you mean?
Okay.
Oh, spicy. They did have some goats. They had some like baby goats. Baby goats are about as cute as it gets.
They are, except for their little demon eyes. If you could swap out the demon eyes for like regular cute animal eyes, baby goats are perfect.
Is that why? Is that why goats were adopted by Satanism? Just their eyes.
Yeah, I mean they are pretty badass, I guess.
I can't see like an adult goat though without thinking of Black Phillip.
Did
you guys ever see The Witch?
No.
You never? Neither one of you? Okay.
I don't watch horror movies.
Well, he was a goat.
Because of Satanism, like Sam said.
He was a satanic goat. But yeah, so that's exactly what it was, though. It's just like this huge like trade show of nothing but farm stuff. So there was like, all these massive tractors and machines that like, there's so many different machines in there that you look at it and you're like, I sat and looked at one for like an entire day thinking like, what is this for? Like, it's like this wagon with these two big weird augers facing upward on the back of it and stuff like that. And I just like could not figure out what it was for. And then finally somebody was like, oh yeah, it's like it
inseminates 30 cows at once.
Well, it inseminates the ground with seeds.
It was like it's a turd tosser. It like spreads manure out the back. But
I think I would really enjoy going to this.
It was pretty cool to walk around. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Were the tractors real big, Casey?
They were real big. Big as it gets, boy.
Oh.
But there's so much weird, like, high-tech stuff involved now. Like, there's all these different, like, programming things where they, like, give you, a digital look at like where you're planting seeds and stuff like that to make sure you don't miss any hole. I guess it's so you can be like the ultimate cheapskate and you're like, oh, that hole got a double seed, so you can go out there and with your tweezers and pluck it out or something. But the coolest thing that I saw was drones. So they have these giant like those like DJI drones. They have those, but like they're big. They're probably 6 to 8 feet across with the arms outspread.
Okay.
So they can lift like 120 pounds worth of payload in this thing. And they use them for like spraying fields and stuff now. Instead of a crop duster, you get these drones and you set up like this GPS eye on a pole in the field. And then this thing like literally just, it maps a course through the field and then sprays the entire thing like while you're standing there.
How long does the battery last?
Well, I think you have multiple batteries. I asked him at that. I cannot remember how long he said, but you got to have multiple batteries.
Okay, so it's not a set it and forget it. Like you're still going to have to actively manage it. It's just quicker than doing it yourself, like on the ground, and it's cheaper than hiring a crop duster.
Yeah, I think the guide said that it was like $10 an acre to have your field sprayed
Wow,
by
they
an
must be able to do
airplane.
that really quick then.
And you
Oh
said
yeah, well,
120 pounds too? So, I mean, it can also relocate small to medium-sized children too, which is cool.
I did ask the guy. I was like, "Could you technically like string a tire swing between two of these and then just like take me to Big Lots?"
Something that size, I'm wondering, like, is there an option to mount weapons on this? There's got to be an option to mount weapons, like for varmints, farm
Yeah,
Yeah, for
varmints.
varmints, not intruders or anything.
Right. But like, obviously, I'll want to be able to control that
Can I put
from
night
the drone
vision?
control.
Does this also come equipped with night vision? And
it's like as a 9 millimeter submachine gun, for cane beetles.
yeah.
Do you ever see the old like FPS Russia back in the day where he had that quadcopter with the machine gun on the bottom of it?
I don't remember that. No.
It's so cool. I don't know how he got that or how anybody gets that or why you would need it, but I mean, I guess if you're trying to kill like terrorists or something, I suppose.
And who
But
isn't?
you don't have to bomb a whole wedding when you can fly a drone like 3 inches from somebody's face and then put 30 rounds in their head.
Yeah, but hear me out, Casey. The drone can just sit up in the clouds and you can kill the whole wedding. Have you thought about that? Thank you to podcast
I-
sponsor Lockheed Martin.
This podcast brought to you by Northrop Grumman. But yeah, so that was pretty interesting. Interesting crowd. There was the
Yeah.
first morning was Friday morning. They had like a lot of like student groups there. I assume they were there with like 4-H and other programs like that. But all of these kids had these like long walking sticks, and on top they had like a lanyard with beads on it.
There's
And
is this like
the
a
guy,
program for
I was talking to
potentially?
one of the guys, and he said it was something like a religious group was handing out, but I never got like a full explanation on what it was. But they must have handed out, I mean, just
Religious
tons of
group
these,
handing out beads to people. So this is
like
like an
a
anti Mardi Gras
walking
thing.
stick
Uh-huh.
with a lanyard around the top that had beads on it. It was something for prayer or something like that.
Yeah, they're fighting it back against Mardi Gras.
Dude, I definitely saw a whole bunch of those like splintered and smashed out in the parking lot where kids definitely like had sword fights with them.
Of course.
But then on the way out on Friday afternoon, and I saw these guys multiple times, but there was an old couple there. They were at the door, and this is a big show. I mean, there's a lot of people here, and they were handing out these little yellow papers. And I was like, I gotta get one of those. I know what that's gonna be. So I walked through. I took one of them from them, and I figured it would just be like a gospel track or something like that, or an ad for their church or whatever. And it's not. It's it's so if it's basically like 3 inches long and probably 6 inches wide, and it's just tiny text, like single space. The whole thing is full of text, and you're looking at it, and there's so many numbers on this page. Um,
It's like
but
they don't realize people don't like to read anymore. It needs pictures if you're gonna have this be successful.
Was
well,
this
and
a
the
nu-
dude was ancient that was handing them out. Like, there's no way that he can read this.
is this a
Oh my
numerology evangelist? Like,
god,
did you
that
encounter
text
the
is
first
tiny.
numerologist in the wild?
I don't know if it's that or if it's a mix of that and just this guy's like he's got his manifesto and verses like really laid out. It says I won't say his name, but he's a chaplain from Blue Springs, Missouri, which is like around Kansas City, I think. And I'll just read you guys a little bit here in a couple of sections to give you an idea of what this is like. So the header says Revelation 17:5. The
Starting out with prophecy.
1611 King James Bible has had the above verse in bold print for 400 years. Why are people praying and asking God what it means? I asked God what the 1335 days at the end of Daniel means. He led me to see the 45 days in Revelation. In 8:1 are 15 days. In 17:12 and 18:10, 17:19 are 30 days.
I've lost the plot. Is this going to come together? Because I'm not sure which numbers are which words.
No, it never
Okay.
comes together. I've read this
Dang it.
twice, and I can't put together a single narrative here. Uh, I feel led by God's Spirit to tell about 17:5. Abominations are what God hates. One of the worst abominations is the lie about eternal hell, which that caught me by surprise. I was like, Okay, where are we going here? This might be
Yeah,
interesting.
this is definitely taking a turn I wasn't expecting.
We
Which
got a
is,
love
I mean,
love wins bro out here.
It says, God says the wages of sin is death, Romans 6:23. In Genesis 2:7, man became a living soul. In Ezekiel 18:4 and 20, sinning souls die. Only God is immortal, 1 Timothy 6:16.
I feel
The
like this
wicked
would
will burn to
have Bob
ashes.
Hickman.
It's got Bob Hickman vibes,
Yeah.
for sure. Malachi 4:1 through 3, and God entered my body like a body my same size.
Exactly. Like you floating into me and me floating into you. The Holy Ghost baptism.
Yeah, it goes so many different directions. I'll skip ahead a little bit. Isaiah 13:13, God will shake earth off of its orbit. Earthquakes and other natural disasters will get much worse. These people love earthquakes.
Earthquakes and natural disasters. They get
But
like horny for them. It's because they know they're ramping up, and instead it just gets to a point where instead of like being like actually feeling empathy and sorrow for these things happening around the world, they're just like, well, you know what the Bible says, and you're like, okay, here we go.
Casey, I'm sorry, I don't want to derail you reading this. Did you just drink sweet tea out of a shaker bottle?
no, it's a vitamin C drink.
Okay, it was the color of sweet tea instead of Jim shaker bottle, so I just
It's red if you see it in person.
okay, all right, I'm sorry.
He said, "This is not underscore man-made climate change. I believe it's like Zechariah 14:2 will be the United Nations. So Revelation 17:12 will be 10 divisions of the UN. Time will tell."
Time will tell what exactly.
I
That's like
guess
a good thing to
it's
put at the end of every outlandish claim you make.
We'll see.
Time will
he
tell.
should have inserted a few more of them. I feel like
That's
our
like
national debt is
I'm
of
wrong
no concern.
insurance.
Yeah. It will be canceled for the end of or it will be canceled for the end time reset. Every crisis will be used to take away freedom by imposing more ungodly controls. Fearful people are easy to control.
Joel,
Just
that's
like what
true.
happened with COVID.
I think that's what he might mean. So
I'm
there's a
so. I
lot of
mean,
other
you
things.
guys, how much less free do you guys feel now that COVID's over?
I
Super.
feel pretty oppressed.
Yeah. Okay. Scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the freest you've ever been, Jeremiah. How do you
Well, that
feel?
that would have been when I was like 11, probably. So, but that was all an illusion. That was an illusion by my captors, my parents.
Yes.
Uh, but- no, I feel about the same level of free, if I'm being honest.
Well, that might mean that this guy's pamphlet's not right, though. So I'm
Well,
having a
no,
hard
actually, I'm
time
sorry, Sam. I'm
believing
sorry,
that.
Sam. I just had a repressed traumatic memory come up. Once, when I was going to Home Depot in April of 2020, they did have us wait in a line outside, and they only let a certain amount of people into Home Depot at the same time. So I take back what I said.
The
I'm slightly less
audacity.
free than I was. I'm
In
slightly
Virginia, of
less
all
free.
places. How could they?
Now, once you get into Home Depot, you could do literally anything you wanted, and they didn't adjust anything else. So I don't think, and it didn't. This isn't like the busiest Home Depot in the world. So I don't think the number of people in Home Depot was any different than if they had just let us walk in there. But
Maybe
point
not.
is, somebody tried to stop me from walking into Home Depot. By try, I mean they weren't forcing me. I just chose to participate in society and be polite. So kind of like being enslaved by the government.
Did you know that statistically, more people over the age of 30 just licked surfaces in public places during COVID than at any other time in human history?
Just to like prove a point.
Mhm.
Okay.
You can fact
That,
check that.
I don't know what to do with that. I mean,
You
I
will
actually
find
believe you.
out that I made that up completely if you do, but you can.
I would believe you just because I remember a couple people fake acting like they were going to lick things to make COVID jokes, and that's not anything that I've ever seen before. So it might actually be true.
It sounds like something that would be true. I
I
feel
think
like
the only
generally people's disposition is to uh, not act much older than toddlers when they're told no, despite their
that's true.
age.
That's true. I think the only thing that significantly changed for me in regards to like going out in public is I became acutely aware of how often I wasn't washing my hands in situations where I should probably have been washing my hands for
Yeah.
years. And now I have hand sanitizer in all of our vehicles, and I always wash my hands as soon as I get home from something. And I'm like, huh, that's kind of just a basic hygiene step that I could have been doing a long time ago.
Very privileged, if I do say so myself. But
It's true. It's
anyway,
true.
enjoy your privilege, Jeremiah.
I do. I do. Um, Casey, could you hit the start of that pamphlet again? Because I feel like it went off the rails so quickly. Like I was just gearing up. I was warming up to see where is this going to go, and I
Well,
lost the plot like on word 5 or something.
I feel like you're looking for a a central thread here, and I don't know that I've gotten to it yet.
Well, he
Um,
believes there's a central thread, right? Like he obviously thinks there's a point here. He's distributing them. Like I'm not trying to make sense of it for me. I'm trying to make like what sense was he making?
well, I'm trying to pick up on some of the themes that he seems to go back to here and there, because everything that we went through in the beginning, I don't know that it really ties into the end of this much.
Interesting.
Um, Here's a couple of good lines from it. The sad looking picture of the long haired hippie is a fake Jesus that Paul warned about in 2 Corinthians 11:4. He says, God's Spirit can be with you and not in you. Jesus said, blah, blah, blah. In vain do they worship me. The day of the Lord will be 1 year. Isaiah 34:8 and 63:4 call it a year of God's vengeance. I think the main bone that he has to pick here, and where this is like what he feels he's laying the groundwork for, is that he's really upset about churches meeting on Sunday.
Really?
Oh, wow, that's a
Whoa.
major plot twist.
I did not get that from that.
That's what
Me
all of these
neither.
arguments
Neither did
culminate to.
anybody. Yeah, I
I
don't
love that
exactly know how
all
they
these
all tie in.
paragraphs, and then he's like, "In conclusion, I think it's really problematic that churches meet on Sunday." And you're like, "I'm not sure how any of your previous arguments back up your conclusion,
Like we might agree, but for very different reasons.
because it
Well,
just shouldn't meet on any days." Is that what he's thinking?
he
He's a
says
Saturday guy. I can tell he's a Saturday guy.
he kind of lays out why all the good things that God said about the Sabbath. He said it was Jesus's custom. Gentiles were also keeping the Sabbath, Acts 13:42. This was over 30 years after his resurrection, proving God's Sabbath is for all mankind forever. Kicking all Jews from Rome, Acts 18:2, helped lead to Sunday worship. First Sunday law was by a pagan sun worshiper, Constantine, 321 AD. Is Constantine a sun worshiper?
I don't know.
Googling
He
it.
wasn't. He was just whatever helps me win kind of guy.
I know why God's wrath is recorded 12 times in Revelation, which he does not elaborate on. All Sunday churches have a human founder. Sabbath worship honors the founder of Christianity. Sabbath breaking helped cause the divorce of Jeremiah 3:8. Virgins in Revelation 14:4 avoid fornication, quote, law breaking, for the marriage in Revelation 19:9. Jesus said, keep the commandments, repent, be baptized in the name of Jesus. In Acts 19, people were rebaptized correctly. Sabbath ends at sundown, so Acts 27 was a Saturday night social until midnight. And then
I don't understand what any of that means.
I
Like,
don't either.
I love it because I've come across people who get hung up on like, well actually types who
It's like we added an extra day into our calendar just to make it convenient. Like, you really want to get hung up on what day of the week it is? It's just that we all agreed. We just all agreed today is the day we're calling Saturday. It
right.
doesn't mean anything.
As though something magic happens if you act. It's like actually Jesus was born and well actually Easter's. It's like, oh my god, like but there are those people who feel like they need to like have the purest somehow that like the way it was done then connects you to God
Right. You shouldn't celebrate
more.
on calendar Sabbath. You have to celebrate fiscal Sabbath.
It's so strange, but
Well,
it somehow allows an actual real like people have lost the plot because they worshipped God on a different day.
I
Well,
think he
isn't that
would say that you guys are part of the problem.
Yeah, I've always felt like I need to get right with God, and He's helping. I'm just processing out loud,
So
but
he
I am landing where this guy is.
my gosh,
so if
that's
you
so
see this
small.
section right here, he goes rapid fire.
Yeah,
And
that's nice.
I'm not going to read all these different verse numbers and stuff, but
We should post
here's a
it on
couple
the.
of
We can take the name out, but we should post it on the gram.
Or we could put it in the Discord. Get the cryptographers of the Discord working on this together.
there we go. I like that. I'll share his name with them.
Yeah,
Here's a few little footnotes from that
let's have
rapid
him
fire
on.
section. It says, God hates lukewarm attitudes. Be zealous. Naked, means Bible ignorance. Study. Millions of people die from food shortage. Prepare. Then he talks
I'm
about,
getting
more
whiplashed
natural
hard right now.
disasters. No
Naked
person
memes
will
are
buy food
ignorant.
without Satan's mark. That's a favorite. Um, a Christian death from now on is a blessing. Explain this one. Trinity spirits caused the Battle of Armageddon.
Oh my God.
What does that mean?
Trinity spirits.
It's underlined and bolded if that
Caused the
helps.
Battle of Armageddon. I mean, I feel like Trinity spirits can only really refer to one thing, right?
I mean,
The
the
Trinity?
Trinity would,
Right.
but what are the spirits of the Trinity? The spirits of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The spirit of the Holy Spirit. It's like Spirit Squared, which
Trinity.
means
Let's see.
more spirits. And
LGB.
yeah,
That doesn't line up.
no.
Did you get the like? What do you think this was the
Q
guy?
non.
do
Does that
you think
work?
this was the guy handing out the stuff? Like, do you think it was him, or was this like one of his apostles?
I think it was him. I
Okay,
think it
can
was
you
like him and his wife.
describe them?
Oh, okay. Here it's a Tuesday morning. It's
Mhm.
6 o'clock, and for some reason the lobby is open at the local Hardee's. This guy's in there eating breakfast.
Okay,
He's got the old kind of like shiny plasticky hat that's really tall, the snap shirt buttoned down, and then those jeans that are that weird light blue color with no fading or coloration to them, and
okay,
probably boots, but maybe Velcro tennis shoes. It's one of the.
all right,
And I'm going to say a tooled leather belt.
okay.
Um,
Probably driving like a '96 F-150 that's pristine.
Either that or like like an '80s Crown Vic.
Yeah, yeah,
It
okay.
could be a big car, no matter what. Closing notes here: Protestant daughter churches and abominations on earth. This one was my favorite. So he says, Revelation 18:3, riches of merchants from Christmas and Easter sales.
Amen.
I think is he saying like people shouldn't be profiting off of Christmas and Easter sales? Because like some of this guy's points not bad. I think.
I'll say, given my last decade in retail, I will absolutely join this guy's team on that tenant alone.
Like he seems based on a couple of things. Some other stuff we're not sure, and you want to be careful.
I was just thinking about this, like, this is what people used to direct their paranoia and like, obsessive compulsive impulses into, rather than like, the moon is hollow and there's tunnels under the US where they used to transport the children.
Right. Yeah, this is like
It's
just
kind of
good
cute in that way.
good classic conspiracy theories where you're like, oh, I don't understand what you're saying, but that's cool.
I love people like this because also I feel like they either just stayed, in that lane their entire, it's like 50-50 whether or not they stayed in this lane their entire life, or like they amassed a small following and they all woke up tied to tables having demons blood let out of them. And you never know which way it's going to go. And I miss that, before like FBI watch lists and really looking at people like, I miss the good old days where you could just get swept up in a small cult more easily.
Yeah.
Everything's just too, like, social media ruined small cults, everything's just like nationalized. It's kind of sucks.
Yeah. And it's also because like, these days, the thing I'm most impressed by, he seems, if anything, pro-Semitic. And that's pretty rare for somebody making pamphlets like this and handing them out.
Pretty
in front of a gun show.
woke, if you ask me.
Like if he was at the gun show, that pamphlet would read a little different.
Guaranteed.
Well, we should have this guy on. I don't think he'd be. I think he'd be a great guest, and I think we could help get some clarification on all of these topics.
The first half of the
I'll say his
podcast.
first name because I love it. I would totally name my kid this. No, it's Arlo.
That's a cool
Ooh,
name.
That's not bad.
Isn't that cool?
Arlo.
I would
That's
totally
pretty good.
use that.
Yeah,
Let's have him on.
Podcast will just be you like tech supporting him through trying to explain. All right, a web browser is the icon you click on that takes you to Fox News.
Yeah, I would definitely just have to be there in person holding the microphone up to his lips, or else there's no way this would happen.
Yeah.
A little like Bob Hickman.
Yeah, a little bit like God.
Oh man,
I did see a post from Bob Hickman about potentially starting a podcast.
I saw that.
That was cool. I don't think he knows what that means. So and then also while we're on the Bob Hickman topic, he added me to a group chat last week. And that got weird fast. It was just pictures of him naked, no dong, but it was it's
Was
it
he
was
facing the other direction, standing on his tippy toes?
yeah,
Arms up.
more like full cheek than in his normal Instagram. I left the chat and I didn't really know how to get out of it right, so I think I deleted it, but
He
I sent
basically gave you a free subscription to his paid OnlyFans. That's what he did.
yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's just the side, but his knees are always wrapped, which is concerning, and then you can see some a little bit of his pubic bone protruding, and the first person who said hi was Thug Gay Sex TikToks was the
If you don't know who we're talking about, just pause this right now and go on YouTube or social media, either one, and look up Bob Hickman or Bobby Hickman.
I
And
just looked him up on Instagram, and it doesn't disappoint. I don't know what I was
Oh, he's
expecting.
a hero. We also posted a picture of a van that he used to drive around that just had like writing on
it
all
has his
over it.
mantra on it.
Yeah, like
God
God entered
entered
my
my body
body.
like a body my same size, like me
He's
floating into you or you floating into me. Holy Spirit baptism.
I do have his actual number, and we have texted a little bit, and it's makes me nervous every time it happens. But I'm really hoping we get a chance to speak, and potentially record it, depending on what
Bobby's
his
just gonna like
tech
fall in love with
capabilities are.
Sam like that chat bot.
Yeah, maybe maybe Bob is just an AI chatbot. Just
Hey, I don't know. Could be a glitch in the matrix.
yeah,
Okay, so real quick, I feel like I really have to address last week's episode.
yeah. I think that's worth taking a second for.
So we had Nick and Haley Gaglione, who call themselves Two for Christ, and they're a young Christian couple, married, expecting a baby, and they kind of, I guess they're trying to like start a ministry, is kind of what they're trying to do. We had them on because we saw their Christian Eye of the Tiger cover and thought it was funny. And we thought this would be fun and funny to have them on and talk to them because they're clearly like very dyed in the wool, conservative evangelicals.
Yeah,
Haley has also done a bunch of, pretty on the nose, like conservative trumpet songs over the
She has
years.
multiple albums, right? Like from listening to the episode, it sounded like she's produced a lot of music.
Yeah, most of it is not like political in nature, but she does have like some political songs out there, like "Back the Blue" and you know,
something
uh,
about how great and wonderful and godly Trump is as well,
yeah, "Warrior
which
for
is
Christ," Donald
funny.
Trump.
I mean, it's hard to. I find it. Sorry to cut you off. I just find it hard to like that to us. That's part of the aspect of it that's interesting. It's like that's clearly funny, not intended to be, and but from our perspective and all of the listeners' perspective, it's hard to imagine there being one person who listens to this podcast that wouldn't see that and be able to laugh on it on their own time. Like it's the absurdity of it is it's too much to even if it like it maybe after thinking about it, it makes you angry. Like it feels because it feels like it could be a satire, right? To some degree, it could easily have
Yeah,
been like a liberal pretending to do it's so on the nose. Like it just kind of laughs at itself a bit.
yeah, and the reactions were mixed.
Yeah.
I'll say that. So, a lot of people listened to it, and there was some people that really enjoyed it, that thought it was funny. Some people, the reaction that I can totally understand is people being like, "Oh, this is an episode with like conservative Christians like I grew up with and probably I used to be. I don't really want to listen to that."
Yep.
That totally
Fair.
get. Um, the reaction that caused some ruffled feathers, I think, was, you know, I don't know why you would have these people on at all. It's like dangerous and not productive to talk to them.
Yeah, you're platforming radical ideologies that are are dangerous, that cause harm.
So right off the bat, the word Nazi was thrown around, and I mean, first of all, Nazi. I mean, all right, don't trot out the definition. Oh well, they're for this and they're for that. I mean, 50% of the country. These are like boilerplate, typical Fox News conservative opinions that these people have. Like most of the people I know think exactly the same thing. And I have a lot of relatives that think exactly the same things as them. Like
And they were
Nazi
nice
is
about
not a
it.
question.
And they didn't seem like they were gonna try to, like, fight you on anything either. They seemed like they were like, even when you could tell they definitely disagreed, they were pretty nice about it the whole time, and they didn't seem like they wanted to get in a fight about something. They weren't trying to, like, dunk on you to get points or something. And granted, they were guests on your podcast, but, like, I think they handled disagreements fairly maturely as well.
Yeah, decent enough. It was
Yeah.
civil. I think
But that
using the
that was
word
part of the
Nazi for
problem. That
the
was part of
the
the problem for some people is the civility. Like, it's if you're going to have people on like that, you need to blatantly point out how awful their ideas are and dunk on them the entire time. Like, it would have been successful only as much as it was a dunk fest on our end for the individuals who felt that way about it.
I don't know. You guys snarked him a few
I
times. It
thought we
didn't
were
really feel like
snarky.
you were taking it that easy.
I
Yeah.
I thought that snark was pretty thick, and that's what made it fun. And even when it moved in certain directions, I thought the intent was to like pull out a debate. Like Casey and I had talked frequently beforehand about like do not get sucked into a vortex because that's what these people try to suck you into like a tit for tat vortex. And we I think maybe you mentioned this on maybe the intro or something, Casey, but like we had fallen into that before and then never released an episode because we got sucked into a vortex of back and forth and never cutting off and just listening fully to all of the ideas. And it was the worst episode we've ever recorded and we didn't release it. We made a
it
lot of
sucked.
mistakes there. And this was our second try at having people on that
Eh,
we I guess
we've
not
done
our
a
second.
few. We've
Yeah,
done a
yeah.
few.
But I mean, this was very intentional. Like it wasn't like you know what? I bet this is really like let's really get to know the people behind Two for Christ. It wasn't like we were just like this video was funny unintentionally and we are that piqued our curiosity and thought that as people who are I don't know. I think a lot of ex-evangelicals are on a mission of some sorts. They're doing a new form of evangelicalism or evangelism, I should say, where they want to pull everybody to their side, pull people out of evangelical Christianity. And if they feel that they need to do that, I mean, whatever. But that's not what we are trying. Like, I feel like we've been pretty open about our intent being entertainment and trying to do things that are fun for us that we think will make good content. We don't really have that same mission of like trying to I guess just like tear apart the worst corners of evangelicalism for the sake of pointing out how bad it is. I don't know. So I think we're
Well,
just
that's
kind of
that's
past
the
that.
thing is like, if we were to get like aggressive with these people and just like crapping on them, basically in the conversation because they're not going to stick around for that, you know.
Right.
But even if they did, like, who would that be for? Like, nobody in this audience is at danger of being like, wow, they made really powerful points, and I think I'm interested in church again.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Or
it'd
whatever.
be
Like, it's just not going to happen. And like that seemed to be beside the point for some of the people that like were upset about it. But I think the whole idea of platforming and stuff like that, like obviously there's a place. I mean, I'm not a purist on that, but as a general rule, I mean, I think that there's kind of like there's an arrogance present in that on that idea of like you have to deplatform, anyone that has an idea that you don't agree with or that's bad. I I think that people are responsible for their ideas, you know, and like hearing, someone hearing what these people had to say, whether it's from, on our show or elsewhere. Like, if that causes someone to think like, man, I think they make some good points and I want to go to church, like, that's that's their responsibility. They're responsible for their ideas. But I think we all know that that's not happening. Like, that's the whole state of the country right now, is just that, like, people retreat to their separate trenches and they fire shots at each other and no one ever moves an inch.
Right. And
And
Oh,
then
I
the
think
arrogance of to speak to the arrogance, I think of like these people, like I'm telling you that this is a problem, and it's a problem because other people who are weaker than me are susceptible to their
yeah,
viewpoint. But I need to be the one to to decide what's acceptable to be played for other people. They can't decide for themselves.
I'm smart
Um,
enough to sort this out and I've come to the right conclusions after
yeah,
being in this community, but other people aren't. They're dumb. So I have to shepherd them along and not let them hear things that I think are bad for them.
right. And of course, I think they're wrong, and I will say that. I don't think we minced words, and I think that's what's just like you can think somebody's wrong, and not need to make it your mission to convince the rest of the world that they need to listen to you or these people versus them or that. Like that's an endless battle, and I don't think that that even makes converts ever. I don't think that that works in practice in really any way.
like I think it's not a like a black or white thing. Like I'm sure that these two have views on the LGBTQ community that you don't agree with, right?
And that are
Sure.
harmful. And
And
I'll
and they
concede to the
harmful.
fact that they're
And
harmful and that they actively do harm to people. Yeah.
right, but in this episode, from what I remember, nothing related to that came up. Like they didn't talk about their well, I'm trying to think of song titles that aren't too offensive to say. Like they didn't talk about like we've got our new song coming out, about protecting the kids from drag queens or whatever, right? Like if I'm
Doomed to
not I wouldn't
groomers or something like that.
right, I wouldn't put it past them, but like and if they had said something like that, you probably would have made jokes about it or like just poked fun at it, but if they doubled down, like I'm sure you guys would have handled it, right? Like you would have pushed back on it, and if they kept going, you wouldn't have tolerated it. But like they weren't hateful about any of that, even if they probably believe some things that are hateful. Like that doesn't mean you can't have a conversation about other stuff and still disagree respectfully. Like the fact that they hold some of these views, I think what I'm trying to say is the fact that they hold some of these views doesn't mean that they should be disqualified from getting to have views about anything else or getting to explore that with you or talk about it.
Yeah, and I think the thing, I mean, again, like, everybody listening to this podcast, I'm assuming that you probably came out of the same environment that we did or something similar to it. And, look back a decade. I mean, a decade ago, I would have explained to you why gay marriage was wrong and why it threatened the sacred covenant that God had established between one man and one woman, and how, like, not only is
Right.
it wrong, but it needs to be legislated against and stuff like we all thought really ridiculous things by our standards now, not that long ago. And, like, you look back on what caused you to think differently about things, what opened your mind and made you think about those in a different way. It wasn't confrontational preaching by, you know, somebody who's out to, like, scream in your face that's hurtful and bad and stuff. Like, it took personal conversations with people that you trusted for you to move in the direction that you ended up going.
Yeah.
And, like, it's all kind of like it's almost like ridiculous to say, because again, that, like, wasn't the point of the conversation. It was supposed to be fun, but, like, it inevitably turned into, like, well, you've platformed Nazis, and
Yeah.
people died of COVID because of people like this and stuff. And I
Yeah.
can't tell you how, like,
They're just
how
not the
ridiculous
originators
that
of these ideas. I think that's what it was like. Well, would you actually have, would you have so and so on? Would you have Kanye on? Would you have, like, you could ask all these questions, but it's like, you don't just, I wouldn't, I guess what I'd be saying is I wouldn't just black and white filter people out based on their good or bad ideas. I think it's just based on the individual. Like, I don't know. I don't, it's like, I don't not presented with the opportunity to have some big time like talk about like a Ben Shapiro or a whatever fucking Crowder. It's like, yeah, these people suck and they go on other people's podcast and they have a platform. Uh I don't know if you I feel like you could more reasonably have a conversation about whether or not it's a wise decision to have somebody like that on your podcast. But I would say if you're a totally opposing ideology and you wanted to have them on for the sake of conversation, then I don't it's like Kyle Kalinske has Jordan Peterson, like talks to Jordan Peterson. I
Yeah.
watched that and I wasn't like, to find that offensive, I think is strange. I think when you get into more serious type people, for the sake of silly entertainment, it becomes less uh, purposeful for what we're doing. Like if there was like a serious theologian with bad takes, I wouldn't want to talk to them because that's boring. You're just gonna get it's just listening to arguments and people being boring about bad ideas. Like, no, that's not. I think what's interesting even about this, and I'm gonna guess that they're not going to listen, but in the event that they are, I'll try to take this from like I'll try to say it is like as though they were in the room, um, because that's how I would treat a person because they're human. I
Right.
know that's controversial apparently, but uh, we got messages from people who were like, what's interesting about this is listening to it. There were comments about like Nick seeming like a genuinely nice guy and who just wants to be a good person and help others. Is he in something that we don't think is good or helping others? Yeah. But when you look at his story and how he got there, you're like, okay, this makes
Yeah, but
sense.
he might actually be helping some people. Like it's maybe not people you would necessarily agree with or helping them in the way that you want, but obviously he was helped this way, right?
Right.
Like it,
It,
it's not
it,
an
Yeah.
all or nothing thing.
And I
And
think, but then you
I
listen
don't
to
know.
like,
There's
and so maybe just if you're listening, you can take this, Haley, you can take it as some constructive criticism. But when Nick wasn't, this is what other people, and the conversations that I've had with people who've listened, they go, Nick would be talking, and then he would be cut off in order to set the narrative straight. Like, oh well, but that's because we believe X, Y, and Z. It couldn't be left up to the possibility of interpretation or interpreting him wrong. And you could even see that back and forth with these two people that like, they're different. And I would say, like, just from my personal experience, saying like that everyone they're all on equal footing. I'm like I feel like I personally felt like Nick seemed like he was in a different place than Haley, even though they're doing the same thing together. And the listeners who responded were like, yeah, there's something about Nick that seemed that felt it didn't feel like he was trying to push a particular narrative or beliefs, and actually there's something genuine there. Not saying Haley's not genuinely trying to do this or that, but I do think that her takes drifted more into um, the specifics of like, oh, we have to guard or gatekeep this set of beliefs, and if it sounds like you could be falling outside of that, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that people know where we stand. And I find that much less appealing, and so did the audience. But they were able to see through that, and they didn't get swept up into like, well, I guess I'm a Nazi now because I listen to these people with these takes. And
yeah.
because you can just respect the people who are listening, and assume that they can pick up on the same things we did when we had the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those two, I mean, I've thought about it a lot since we had the conversation with them, but they're also young, you know. I mean, think
Yep.
about the difference that 8 years made for you, and the things that you thought were important at the time and the way that you looked at, how you needed to present yourself and your beliefs. I think that stuff changes over time as long as you're getting out into the world and talking to people. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if that changes for them over time, or if some people really just kind of double down on it. But
Yep. And
it
it could
seems like
go
most
either
sort
way.
of find a happy median.
I would like to say if you know, however you felt about that, just buckle up because we do plan on finding other people who you will hate just as much. So
Right.
we're going to do it again.
Because it's fun.
Funny. It's fun for us. It's like a mental exercise too. You're like, can I get past myself to not get sucked in and just figure out how to make this a good time for us while we're in it, and also for when people listen back to it later. So this will, we probably won't have the same conversation about it after each one, but this is like kind of our first in a while attempt towards having a conversation with people who were so far outside of us, where we're at, or where anyone in our audience is at, that it felt like it was at least worth addressing. So
if you go to growingupchristian.com/debate us, you can fill out the form and
Oh my God. Yeah, speaking of future guests, we can't drop any names, but boy, do we have a big one coming up. We got a very exciting one that I think when you see the name, you're going to be like, no kidding. So
they got Billy Graham. It's an AI.
We put everything he said into Chat GPT, and we're gonna have a conversation with him. That would actually be really
could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Put every one of his writings, get all of his writings, everything he ever said, put it into Chat GPT and have a conversation with Billy Graham. We should try something like
I know
that.
we're all like, we started as a bit, but like, I'm at least 25% on board with this idea already.
I'm at least 95% on board now.
If you can get it to work, it'd be fun just to take him places and have him like order Taco Bell as Billy Graham.
I would like to Jerry Falwell. It would be fun to do it with Jerry Falwell. I never got to talk to him before he died.
Wait, I'm thinking, okay, can we go older though? Like Martin Luther. Like,
then if we would definitely.
Martin Luther doesn't know about tacos, bro.
Yeah, and also I don't think we should be able to platform somebody like Martin Luther. He was.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
I draw the line there, Jeremiah. That's too far. It's too.
This is a bit of a non sequitur. Did you know George Washington didn't know about the existence of dinosaurs? We hadn't discovered dinosaurs yet.
Fuck, I'll be thinking about that. Yeah,
I know. It's a simple little fact, but I kept thinking about it, like, wow. We didn't know about dinosaurs.
That's crazy.
He didn't know about dinosaurs, and he literally like let all his blood out.
Well, there were ghosts in it, so
demons. I think you mean demons.
There's no difference.
So, are you guys ready to jump into some? You ready to jump into the word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this the backside to the pamphlet?
No. Okay, so you actually suggested this topic, Jeremiah. So this is kind of like you're doing here.
Oh no.
So we were talking. We haven't done a Bible story in a little bit, and Jeremiah suggested the story of Judah and Tamar, and I had totally forgotten this story. I mean, there's parts of it that you'll remember because you've heard it brought up in youth group several times, but. This is a very weird story.
What version are you in? I'm bringing it up on Bible Gateway so I can.
I've got NIV pulled up.
Okay, I'll do NIV.
The not inspired version.
Actually, I might, to make sure we're getting the full picture. I'm gonna open up the New King James.
Well, I'm gonna pull up in the original actually, Hebrew. Okay,
Sam, why don't? Well, of course, flex that degree. Sam, could you find
it's backwards. A Jewish study Bible right next to me here.
Dang.
Just in case.
I was going to suggest, Sam, can you find one of those modern woke translations and maybe open that up so we can see how they've diluted this story?
Oh man, they're going to have a heyday with this story. This story is like not very long. So in the course of like putting this all together, I've probably watched like 5 or 6 different preachers tell this story and in like their sermon.
Why do preachers feel the need to cover this story? Not everything has to be preached.
Preachers
they have all sorts of.
I don't think any group plagiarizes work more than preachers. I think that's like the most, and it's not considered even wrong within that line of work. It's just like, you don't have to cite your source. Have you ever heard a preacher cite their sources? No, of course not.
Well, there's only one source that matters. So
I'd love, actually, my friend had who's the pastor of the church that I go to. He posted I don't know, someone found something he said online and they came after him at one point. It was like, I think you plagiarized my work. And my friend's like, I've never heard of you. This doesn't make any sense. I think he was just a grifter hoping he could like scare people into like giving him money before he took him to court or some shit. But
You
uh,
should try the Jehovah's Witnesses.
I was like, you're after the wrong people, dude. There's churches that actually have like, you know, a real building of some. There's plenty of people doing pretty big work that it's in their best interest to just pay you off quickly.
When I suggested this one, I forgot this is the one about jerking off.
Well,
That's just
no.
one of many interesting tidbits you can get from this story.
Exciting news. I had got the text that I don't have work tomorrow because a snow day has officially been called. Hence
Congrats.
my going for the second bev.
Oh, the second Bev. Ooh.
Yeah.
Naughty boy.
How does it feel to have snow days again?
It's cool, man. It's fucking sick. I just got off February vacation, worked today, and now have tomorrow off, and we'll only have 3 days to go after that. And there are rumors of snow on Friday, so we'll see. I would prefer to not have another snow day, but anyway.
So, this story is about Judah, who is one of the sons of Jacob. And Judah really starts out life as kind of a douche. So he's,
It's not uncommon for certain Bible characters.
yeah, it's not uncommon for him to finish it that way either. Judah does seem to like kind of clean up his act at some point, which pastors have a lot to say about that. But so Judah is the fourth oldest of Jacob's sons, and he's the youngest of his sons with his wife Leah.
Now, it was Father Abraham that had many sons, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Abraham just gets to count everybody, it seems like.
Yeah. Do you
But
guys remember
Jacob's
that
the one that they
song?
initially called
Do you guys remember that Bible that song?
Many
Father
sons have
Abraham had many
Okay.
sons.
It felt like
Many
maybe
sons had
you guys weren't
fathers,
picking up
Father
on.
Abraham.
Okay.
and I am one of them,
Them.
and so were you.
So are you.
So let's
So
just praise the Lord.
Right
Man, there's
arm,
nothing
left
better than
arm,
a
right foot, left foot, turn around, jump up and down. That's like, it just goes on forever, right?
Yeah, there's nothing better than a remote podcast where everyone's trying to sing together. Have fun editing that, Casey.
Oh man, what was the one that we sang the other day? We got a couple people that
Awana.
were like, "Oh yeah, the Awana song." Some people were really like jamming out in their car to that.
They weren't mad that you were platforming the marching song of Christian nationalism.
If they were, they didn't comment it. So
Oh, okay.
that's the kind of angry listener I like. So Jacob is the one that at some point they switch, like Jacob changes his name, or God changes Jacob's name to Israel, and then his 12 sons are kind of like the Prometheus
And Bob.
Yeah, the Promethean 12 tribes of Israel heads. All tribesmen descended from their ball sacks. So Judah, like I said, he wasn't the oldest. And if you remember the story, we have to, at some point, we'll have to cover the story of Joseph because it's a pretty wild one. But Joseph was kind of like the goody two shoes dork son that, was like his daddy's favorite, and everybody just like couldn't stand him. He'd always tell him about his dreams and stuff. He's just super annoying.
Oh, that bitch, you got the coat of many colors.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Got the Bape jacket.
Bape jacket.
What does Bape mean? Is that a new term? Am I not cool?
It's a clothing brand with a monkey on it.
I have no idea what that means. All right. I'm looking it up. Sorry, keep going.
So I got me some Baven apes. That's a Soldier Boy line. That's the only reason I knew. That's how I learned. Was that in Superman That Hoe? Whatever that song?
Oh God,
We
I don't know. I only know that one line from it.
All right. Anyway, sorry.
So when everybody was real sick of Joseph, and they decided, like, dude, this guy's got to go. We want him out of here. There was some of the brothers, I think the older ones, that were like, let's kill him. And
Yeah, but they
uh,
pussied out and they just put him in a hole and left.
yeah, they dumped him
They're
in a
like, well, we didn't
cistern.
technically kill him. I mean, I appreciate I love their nuance back. It was great. They had like the real, like, they were very nuanced people. They didn't see things black and white, and they're like, well, we didn't actually kill him. So I respect
It's like
that.
it's like what the Mongols, and they didn't shed royal blood, but they would like roll the prince up in a carpet and then trample him with a million horses.
Yeah, they're like,
They would build a deck and eat lunch on top of you while you screamed in agony.
it's like we didn't kill him. We just tied him over a bamboo shoot and left. What happened afterwards is I have no clue.
Well,
Plausible deniability.
Sounds like Joseph's not a problem solver. Couldn't figure out a way out of that hole.
Also, he
right,
couldn't
yeah,
predict his own death.
like Shadow.
He's like has all these dreams about how everyone's gonna bow down to him, and just couldn't see them throwing him in a hole for being a fucking asshole all the time.
Shut up, Joseph. Put you in a freaking hole, dude. So Judah was the one that when the others wanted to kill him, Judah was the one that was like, "What good's that gonna do? Then we'll have to cover up the crime, and he is our brother, I guess. Let's just sell him into slavery." So he
has
was
real,
kind of the one that pitched
I
the
feel like
idea.
what the way he tries to like throw him off the original idea, it's like real Walter White getting tied up with the cartel vibes of like, whoa. Well, we don't actually want to do that. What we could do though, he did a lot of that throughout Breaking Bad.
Now, if you've had younger siblings, I'm sure you can relate. We're not here to judge.
Just sell them to traffickers,
Yeah, we've all been there.
So they sold Joseph to these Ishmaelite traders that were going by. It said they were carrying like resin and they had like 30 different kinds of sticky stuff, and then they happened to buy Joseph. They sold him for 20 shekels of silver, which comes out to about 8 ounces, which today has a cash value of $165.28.
That is not amazing. Not great.
Just taking a quick look around, I was thinking like, okay, what could you get for $165.25? You can get a pair of AirPods if you're okay with refurbished ones.
I love that you can sell a person for that much, but you can't buy sex for less than that.
Well, if you hear the rest of this story, Sam, that's not going to be as much of a problem as you think for this guy.
So Judah's got that going for him. That's in his records. And of course, if you remember the story, they sold Joseph into slavery. They dipped his lame coat in goat's blood and then told their dad that, must have gotten murdered by an animal.
Yeah.
So Judah at some point, this all takes place in Genesis 38, and it starts off with Judah deciding he's going to leave. So he's going to leave his brothers behind and go chill with his boy Hira from Adullam. And this is where a lot
Is
of
that
the
a
pastors
metalcore band?
Hira from Adullam would be a pretty good metal band. Like that's a metal band that has a synthesizer, though.
Oh yeah, and it's like a crabcore band from the early 2000s.
Oh, crabcore.
So a lot of the pastors that I listen to, like, dude, you're so right. They all kind of like plagiarize each other's takes because they all come to the same conclusions. They're like, he's leaving his family, and let me tell you, son. Let me tell you, church. Bad company corrupts good morals, and it's like this guy sucked beforehand.
He was going to visit somebody. I think we're like missing a lot of context here.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about this guy. It just said that like he went to hang out with him, and it's assumed that like this guy ruined Judah, who sold his brother into slavery, lied to his dad.
I know, like he was, yeah, he didn't already make a few poor decisions leading up to that.
Yep, it was Hira's fault. So he and Hira are hanging out, and they meet the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. The daughter is mentioned multiple times, but of course it's the Old Testament, so she doesn't have a name.
Have a name. There we go. We ran into that when we went through Samson together.
The daughter's name is not Shua. The Canaanite's name is Shua.
No, her dad that plays no role in this story, his name's Shua, but she has no name.
Daughter of Shua. Well, all right, I'm not trying to like devil's advocate here. Wasn't that a common way to refer to people though? Like, wouldn't it not technically be incorrect to say that someone is daughter of Shua? It's
Yeah, you might
disrespectful.
say
Don't get me
like,
wrong.
"This is Peggy, daughter of Shua."
Okay, all right. Again, not defending. I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding this in the correct historical
Different
context.
times.
Different times.
Peggy
Or as I
was a
like to call them,
thing.
the good old days.
Speaking of different times, he sees someone he likes, and what happens next?
Oh, he marries her.
That happens.
Uh,
That's also apparent. We saw that.
What do you?
Samson's like, "Hey, I like that one. I'll take it." And
Well,
and they're like,
like
"Okay."
they're obviously skipping a lot of like, is this a month? Is this 10 years? Like, it's not really clear how much time passes because he obviously doesn't like walk into town, meet this guy Shua, and then just marry one of his daughters,
I
right? Like,
disagree.
you think so? Maybe,
I don't
but
know,
like,
but I'm
I
disagreeing
like
with you.
I like where it says then he went into her in the King James. He went into her.
Oh, see, now that might be lost in these
beautiful.
devilish translations.
What does the NIV call it?
It just said that he like. Let me. Where's it at? Where's that? He married her and made love to her.
It actually says it that way?
He married her and made love to her.
I didn't know the NIV got that progressive with the way they described it.
Pretty filthy.
Well, this is a filthy story.
I will not be letting my children read the NIV.
Well, in
That's
the New
for
King James
sure.
version, there's a lot of going into people in this story. So
Hopefully, Peggy was smitten with Judah as well.
Was spitting? Is it? Did you say smitten? Oh,
Smitten. Oh, you're filthy too. So, he, as the Bible goes, he slept with her, so she's automatically pregnant.
yeah.
That
Unless
happens
she
a lot.
wasn't, then it would be.
again, I feel like they're skipping a lot of time here. Like there could have been 5 years between the start of that verse and the end
See,
of that verse.
I feel like
They
you're
just
really hung
glossed
up on
over it.
time. And the Bible, I've never really known the Bible to be hung up on small things like time. So,
Well, he might be right to bring it up because there's a lot of controversy around the timeline of events in this story because it's all supposed to take place between when he sells Joseph into slavery and then when he meets back up with him in Egypt unknowingly, which people estimate to be about 22 years. A lot of things have to happen in this time period.
I don't
Like what,
appreciate. See,
Casey?
but Casey, I have a Bible degree from Liberty University, so I just don't appreciate you maybe suggesting Jeremiah might be right here.
I think me and Casey are the
it's-
only ones actually reading from the Bible for this
I think
story,
it's
Sam.
disrespectful to Liberty.
I think
You're
I think you just
disrespecting
whipped
Liberty
out-
University right now, and I'm not really here for
Jeremiah just put a spiritual cigarette out on your forehead.
like
that. Oh, now
Sam
you
wanted
sound
the
like my
flex of,
dad.
like, look at the size of this Jewish study Bible or whatever I have in front of me, but has he cracked it open? No.
Typical.
It's
Typical.
correct.
Weren't you a youth ministry major, anyways?
Oh boy.
Oh,
Me? Oh, I thought you were talking about. I thought you were throwing
no, I
shade
was
at
thinking,
Jeremiah.
we're crapping on you right now. It's your turn.
Yeah.
I only took one youth ministry class, and it was with a guy named Richard Brown, and he was an awful professor and not a great person.
It was 3 times a week for an hour each time. It cost Sam $12,000, and they spent half the semester learning how many different games you could play with balloons.
Yeah.
We are 2.5 verses into a 30-verse chapter.
I did not pass that class on the best of terms because I did
What?
fall asleep through it frequently.
Oh, I was gonna say that doesn't
Which he
seem like a
took
class
very
that'd be that hard to
because-
pass.
He believed he was a riveting individual, and he was not.
They always do.
Well, we can't be judgy. We have a podcast.
He goes, "Oh, here's what's cool though. An actual line from Sir. He wasn't knighted, from Rich Brown. He goes, this is going to be something everyone's familiar with, but he goes, here's a little word that it's like when Christians say the things that Christians like to say. He's like, I have a little term for that. I coined this myself. Christianese.
Ooh.
And most people were looking around the room just to check that like other people had heard this word before too. But he really like Al Gore, I invented the internet that situation. He thought he came up with
Really
that
like
word.
Xi Jinping, I invented COVID, that thing. So, anywho, Judah sleeps with her, and Peggy immediately becomes pregnant, as is the custom in scientific ritual. Uh, she conceived and gave birth to a son named That's not a typo. His name is Er.
What
One
chapter are we in? Chapter and verse, my friend.
chapter 38. We're still on like
38.
verse 3.
Could you maybe read faster? God damn.
So she gets pregnant, has who's Judah's oldest son. She immediately gets pregnant again and has Onan, his second born. And then she gets pregnant again and has Shelah or Sheila, I'm not sure. And it has to be in quick succession because the timeline has to make sense, or else my worldview falls apart. So at this point, this is when the preachers usually say something about being unequally yoked.
Oh,
There's a
that comes up this early, huh?
Yeah, there's a theme that
Considering
kind of runs through this whole thing in all of their sermons about how, like, you know, this is about spiritual indifference. This is about, maybe you think you're doing everything correctly. Maybe you think you're obeying the letter of the law, but over time you just wander a little bit further away, a little bit further away, a little bit further away. Pretty soon you're married to Peggy the Canaanite with 3 half-wit sons. There was also a preacher that said that God really, it was his plan and his purpose. He really needed to bring the Israelites to Egypt. That was really important because this is what was going to happen if they stayed in the promised land. They were going to intermarry with the Canaanites, and it was going to corrupt their pure blood,
and
and
the
they would
beauty of
lose
them
their.
leaving that area is they never did that again afterwards.
Learned that lesson the first time. Woo.
That's like
Yeah,
the story
yeah.
is like they fucked the wrong people a lot. that, that I think that is the like if you can find a theme from the beginning from Genesis to what's the last book of the Old Testament?
Revelation. Oh,
No, Old Testament. After Chronicles is
Zephaniah,
Habakkuk.
it? It's
Zechariah,
not Chronicles, is
Malachi,
it? Does it end with
Zephaniah.
Chronicles?
No,
Yeah, it ends in
Don't
Chronicles.
die.
it does. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Anyway, there's a lot of that is one very reoccurring theme is you fucked the wrong person and now you're
Now you're in the finding out portion.
yeah
Of the
you
story.
fucked around and now you're finding out. Perfect.
You made a mistake and made a bunch of people that I have to kill.
I have a PhD in theology of fucking around and finding out.
Yeah. Yeah, the children of Israel were really big believers in the like, fool me once, shame on me.
Yeah,
Fool me
the George
twice,
Bush version of the saying.
ain't gonna get fooled again.
And then, son of a gun, fooled again.
Mission accomplished.
There's got to be some perfect Michael Scott quotes for this as well.
So kind of out of the blue here, and this is like there is no really like accounting for the timeline. But in verse 6 it says, Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar.
And this
How
is
did
Judah and
he
Tamar.
acquire Tamar?
That's immaterial to the story.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's of course all sorts of ways that he could have done it. Like maybe he took out a home equity loan on his yurt.
It's probably the normal way. You just pick 2 of your finest sheep and then you go meet another dad in the community and you're like, look, I have
Maybe you just wander around the playground and you're like, oh, can you help me find my lost goat? And then just off she goes. Maybe you put your arm in a sling and you pretend you can't get the couch out of your van.
But
And then you make
it
her get
doesn't
in.
matter, Casey, because like they're a wonderful couple, holy in the sight of the Lord, and everything works out, right?
Wrong. No, actually, no.
Oh, dang.
So God puts a real period on a couple of relationships in this story. It says, "But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death."
Canceled him, you could say.
He got kicked off his podcast network, spiritually and physically. No explanation. It just says he was wicked in the Lord's sight. So usually the preacher's like, something about this guy, he was wicked. Like something in his life was not right. I don't know what this guy did, but God saw fit to just end him.
Total fail, son. My version says he was displeasing to the Lord. Not even that he was wicked. The Lord was just like, look, bro, I'm just not pleased. That's it.
I told you not to wear polyester in this office again.
You didn't mix two types of fabric, did you?
Are those leather patches on your sleeves? Get out. So Judah's like, great, now I'm stuck with this lady that was married to my son. She's childless. And then Tamar just gets screwed over and over in this story. It just sucks
literally
me.
and metaphorically.
God's very concerned about the moral code of her husbands, but really not concerned with what happens to her afterwards.
Well, and for historically though, like this is also because once she marries into the family, like she is a part of the family. It's not like when the son dies, she can just go somewhere else, right? Like it is also an obligation the family has of like, you're part of the family now. We have to keep you married and we have to let you bear children or make you bear children.
I think so. I mean, like part of the care routine for widows was that their firstborn was supposed to take care of them. Like they were supposed to have sons so that their sons could be their caretakers when something happened to their husband. But of course, they just got married. And I think it's like it's important to remember like what we're talking about here, because I looked up a couple of different things, trying to figure out like, is there like consensus on when people got married in this point in time? There's really not, but the thought is that basically when they hit puberty. So and Tamar were probably between 12 and 15 years old.
Yeah, probably. I feel
so
like
whatever he was doing at 14 years old that was so wicked that God had to kill him. I don't know.
Maybe he deserved it. That's all I'm saying.
Here's the thing. That's the problem with children today, right? They're just soft.
Nobody's willing to kill them.
You can't even hit them anymore. What the fuck is this? You used to be able to kill them. God used to kill them, and now you can't even raise your voice at them without having DCF called on you. A lot's changed, and now look how soft children are.
You used to be able to just strike them dead, and now you have to hope that they get some sort of like mild and somewhat treatable illness that is somewhat fatal, if not, taken care of.
The more I think about it, the more I'm realizing that Two for Christ has some probably really good ideas about the Bible and how it works. We should have never had them on. We should have never had them on.
Tamar? What happened to Tamar after that? Out of the spin?
So Judah's got.
How do we progress through this? Is it possible for us to progress through a story?
I was just progressing right there.
I'm trying.
Yeah, Jeremiah's trying to keep us on track. So Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, jumping in. Then Judah said to Onan, the second-born, "Sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law to raise up offspring for your brother."
Okay.
But Onan.
Another point, though. Let me chip in here because I do like the real changing of times here. Also, quick reference to old Under Oath album. How it go like Christians today are just really wrapped up in whether or not their children are like jerking off in the room above them. But now here in this story, it's like, look, your 14-year-old brother was just murdered by God. And I would really like you to just,
the younger
brother to go have sex with his widow. That would be that'd be great.
And marry her.
But it's like, there's a lot of emphasis on the sleeping together part.
Yeah. and raise
And
up
I
an
like
heir to
that.
your brother, which I think like would that just be his son though? Like I don't really like
Mm,
at what point is it your brother's heir? Like I don't think they're being as
that's
progressive as saying like his bloodline carries on through his wife that he may have never slept with. Like I think it doesn't
no
make
okay.
sense.
So that's where this kind of turns sideways again. So it
Yeah,
says that he gives him that directive, and it says, but Onan knew that the child would not be his. So whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he
sounds like
spilled his semen on the ground to
Oh,
keep from
yes.
providing offspring for his brother.
Onan does not actually know how having kids works. He's like, this kid won't be mine
Well,
that I'm trying to make right now.
but what's
Well,
actually
legally speaking, that's the thing.
what's
I
a
know,
little
but still.
crazy about this is there was a lot of emphasis on like, well, like women could be barren, but there was a lot like a belief that life came from the male, I believe. I believe there was like an idea that like it was more dependent on the male. So I'm a little confused about this. And maybe my understanding of that was wrong, but in a very male centric world, it would s- seem to stand to reason that they believed that. Anyway, sorry, maybe I
Yeah,
shouldn't even
like
gone down that
primitive
road.
cultures, or like a lot of ancient cultures thought that like their origin of life story is, a lot of them it's like some sort of deity jerking off, and were like what their semen produced springing up from the ground or something along those lines. Pretty
Yeah,
biblical.
basically like that.
So it says that what he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death also. Now, I feel like I've seen references. It seems to be like a common thing that people grew up hearing, that this was a rebuke of masturbation or sex that wasn't like meant for procreation. And
Yeah,
all of the pastors that I listened to in this, leading into this story, they all seem to like at least acknowledge that that's not really what this is talking about. So legally speaking, and I'm interpreting the way that what I've heard from a couple of different sources here, but basically like the goal was to carry on your brother's bloodline, right? So you would get her pregnant. The son that she produced would basically have her father, her original husband's birthright. So, for
yeah,
all intents and purposes, like when Jacob died, right? Or when I'm sorry, when Judah died, this kid that would be produced from this, union of Tamar and Onan would count as his firstborn son. The firstborn gets a double portion of the inheritance.
Mm.
Okay,
yeah,
so that's where this is kind of coming into play. Is like this guy Onan knows, like, not only am I gonna probably be responsible for this kid, but he's also gonna. I'm putting him directly in line between me and the inheritance, and he's gonna get a double share because he's technically, legally, the oldest heir.
yeah. Our
And
Jewish friends will back you up on that, and they say here that Odin would have to expend his own resources to support a child that is legally someone else's, and the child, as the heir to the firstborn son, would displace Onan in the line of inheritance to boot. I don't think they're actually Canadian, but I feel like that was a Canadian way of saying it.
so Onan is like, eggnog, sprayed it on the floor of the tent. And so God was so displeased with him, that was so wicked in the Lord's sight, that he put him to death also. So God's justice is swift and unwavering.
Because
And
God is loving and he is
Unless you
also
sold your
just.
brother into slavery.
Right. Well, you're splitting hairs now, my friend.
it is funny, like that's what's hilarious when you hear all the different like takes on this story, and you put it in context with some of the other stuff, is like the things that get people killed and the flippant way in which they're sort of disregarded, it's hilarious. Like it really is funny. So yeah, because of all of that, and there's kind of like I listened to this lady who's like a biblical scholar rather than a pastor, and she was talking about this in sort of like literary terms and stuff. Um, she brought up the term Black Widow. Have you guys heard of that? It's more or less like someone who's had multiple husbands die, and people kind of have like this superstitious like aversion to them
Yep.
because they think they're cursed or something like that. And I'm sure, like, given the context here, Judah at some point had to realize, like, I moved away from my family. I'm, intermarried with the Canaanites. Maybe all of this is cursed, or, it's hard to say what his thought process was. But he does something that's kind of unthinkable in the circumstances, right? You said it earlier, like, Tamar was really like when she married into the family. I mean, she's a part of the family now, and it was their responsibility to take care of her. Um, but Judah does this move here where he says to Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up," because he was pretty young at this point. All right, and
That's
then it says that
awkward though.
he thought he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's household, which is apparently a big deal. It wasn't, you don't just go home after being married off because things didn't work out or something like that. Like, this would have been kind of an embarrassing, disgraceful thing for her to go back to her family's house and live there.
I think that's the concept of the movie Teeth was actually based on this story.
That sounds right. I could see it turning into a screenplay about a
Yeah.
sawtooth vagina.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I think it's hard to say
There were a
exactly.
lot of
Like,
rumors around Tamar, and that happened to be one of them, and it turned into a very successful B film.
yeah, snarf your ding dong off. I feel like if we were going to the extent of thinking like these were real people that actually lived and what would their motivations be, I don't know. It could be all sorts of things. Maybe, maybe he didn't like Tamar. Maybe they didn't get along real well, or their cultures were just like at odds with each other. Maybe his son Sheila, the youngest one, was just a little prick that was like, I don't want to marry her. I want to marry who I want to marry, and he was like shirking his duties.
And he
I,
may
I
have
don't
also
know.
had all right, we can't uh he's just too young. Like the 14-year-old, fine. The 12-year-old, okay. The 10-year-old, all right, we just gotta
Like,
we gotta
He's
listen,
really
only
gotta
10.
remain
you're
cookie
You
for
can't
another year
pop
or
a
two.
you're
boner.
10.
I've watched.
You're
Yeah.
10, and this woman here, you are going to marry her someday. And we're waiting. And every day we'll just see if you've matured into manhood, if you know what I mean. And then once we've determined that you have, we will marry you off to her. That's so strange to like being the woman too. You're like, yeah, this little 10-year-old, I just have to chill in this house with this 10-year-old until they are old enough to actually ejaculate. And then we'll get married. And this is
Judah's
exactly
explaining
what is
this to like
expected of
Tamar,
me.
and she
Yeah.
looks past him, and Sheila's in the background of the tent, like trying to
Playing with
learn
trucks and
TikTok or
shit.
like Fortnite dances. He's like screaming at Minecraft in the background, and she's like, "Oh God."
He's got one of those shitty TikTok kid haircuts. It's all pulled forward.
So she goes back home, and life goes on at Judah's house. Um, it says after a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, you guys remember Peggy from earlier?
Yeah.
Okay, she dies.
Oh man.
So I don't
You
know what
barely
they
knew
put
her.
on the gravestone. Maybe daughter of Shua.
Daughter of Shua and a couple dead sons.
They got a real nice like family cemetery going now. Um, so it says when Judah recovered from his grief, I imagine that took a long time. He went up to Timnah, to the men who were shearing his sheep, and his friend Hira the Adulamite went with him. So remember, Hira was the ride or die bro from the original section.
Right.
So I feel like this is him like kind of getting his groove back. He's like going on a road trip with the boys to kind of get his head straight and stuff after this personal tragedy. Like, what song do you think would be playing in the like road trip montage as Judah and Hira like speed off towards the sheep yard?
On the road again?
What's that like
Oh
good
my god.
Charlotte song where it's like, it's a new day,
What's it called? The anthem?
Yeah. Don't wanna be just like you.
You really missed your calling to be in a pop punk band.
I could have. Oh man, I could have screeched. I could have really like caused some serious
You could be in a
feedback at
pop
Warped
punk
Tour.
band now. I mean, Midwest emo is a thing, you know? There's nothing stopping you, Casey.
I have the gut for like a middle-aged pop punk reboot band.
Yeah, have you seen modern pop punk bands? Like, you'd be okay.
Yeah, I remember seeing like going to see Corey Brandon when in Norma Jean like a couple years ago, and like he was on stage, and I mean he's lived in a van for like 30 years now. Like he looks like he lived in a van for 30 years, and I was
He
like,
looks a little better since he quit drinking. It's definitely a few years have come off. Not a ton, but a few.
looking tight. Is that what you think?
No, I'm sorry. Hopefully, we can have Corey on the podcast one day, but better. He looked better. That's what's important.
So yeah, so big road trip up to the sheep shearing place, and meanwhile Tamar is still just like sitting around her dad's house waiting for the day when she's going to get the invite to come bang Sheila. And at this point, however long it's been, it's not looking good. Like he's grown up, he's older now. It should have happened already, and it has not. And she's
Which is
getting a little like
interesting.
impatient and worried.
Makes you wonder why, because it looks Judah was like really trying to make this happen. So I wonder what was wrong with Shayla, or was he just trying to wait an extra long amount of time? He's like, I got to make sure this works because I don't have any more sons.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of like the implication is that he was going to kind of blow her off from here on out and not really make his son do it. I do wonder too, like, would she technically have to have two sons to put in line in front of Sheila at this point, or like do they stack? Anyways, so she hears that Judah's headed up to shear the sheeps, and oh god, sorry, lost my place here. Tamar was told, your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she gets real resourceful at this point. She takes off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself, and then she sat down at the entrance of Enium, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that, though Sheila had now grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. So, in doing this, in covering her face and in sitting by the gate, she kind of like disguised herself as a prostitute, knowing that Judah was coming by, which makes you wonder, like,
he has a history.
Yeah, like she must have known some things about Judah for her to take this course of action here.
At her
Which
time
seems like
at his house, she's overheard some of his conversations with the boys.
she found a second phone.
Yeah.
Second scroll.
The
His
second
other
scroll,
Snapchat.
yeah. It's like P.O. box.
It just has, will you let me come into you? Check yes or no.
So when Judah saw her, he thought that she was a prostitute, for she had her face covered.
And he was like, yay, my favorite.
Well, he said,
Oh,
please let me
boy.
come into you, for he did not know she was his daughter-in-law, which also, again, that's not a killing offense, apparently.
Yeah.
So
This
at
is
this
like,
po-
I think this is the start of the whole incest porn thing, is where like this is where it originated.
Oh, I think it originated in the Garden of Eden, if you want to get real
possibly,
technical.
but this
We have a
little
history.
dicey story here, I think, is where Christians.
The species has a real browser history, you might say. So he sees her and he's like, dang, I gotta get that.
I love that too. Like, let me cover my face so no one knows what I look like. And then Judah's like, that's what I'm into.
He's like,
so
girl,
he's
you so
gonna think.
modest. You so modest. Can I hit that?
Yeah, he's definitely got like a fetish for face coverings, which is
But
fine.
I think
mean, I'm not
that's what harlots
knocking it.
wear.
I'm just saying that's his thing.
Now he starts simping. He says, come now, let me sleep with you. She says, what will you give me to sleep with you? And he's like, I'll give you a young goat from my flock. Which apparently, he was on his way to his herd and he didn't have it with him. And she says,
Real IOU kind of moment.
Hey, but props
exactly.
to her. She's getting
He's
the
like, no,
payment up
I'm
front.
good for it. I swear.
Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it? She asked. He said, what pledge should I give you? And this is the point at which she asks for his debit card number, his date of birth, and a list of his fears.
Yeah.
And he's
His
just like,
mother's maiden
whatever.
name. The last 4 digits of his social security.
She says, your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand, she answered. So he gave them to her and
And he's
slept
like,
with her.
I'm so horny, I will give you everything that allows me to function as a male in society.
That is literally like what it is. It's like he basically gave her his thumbprint
Yeah.
by the sounds of it.
He was down bad.
It's like
That
handing
boy-
over your iPhone as
That boy's been
collateral.
on the road for a whole morning, and he is struggling.
Judah's definitely one of those guys that would just get catfished and like bled dry over the course of decades.
None of these
Right,
could
like-
just find a, none of these people could just find a large rock to jerk off behind once before they go to town.
Well, he's seen what happens when you do that.
Yeah, I
Which
know.
is
He's like,
probably
my
which is
son
the
got
first
killed for
time-
this.
yeah, it's the first time that has ever happened to anyone back then. No
I'm
one
sure-
had figured it out.
I'm sure Judah knew how absorbent wool was, if you know what I mean. So he just like hands over all of his important identifying pieces to her in order to sleep with her.
He's like, yeah, this roadside horse seems trustworthy.
First time they've ever met, and he's just like, sure, whatever, let's go. So he sleeps with her, and she becomes pregnant, because it's a Bible story. What it takes once. He's probably old as balls by now, too, and he's still potent.
More
It
than his
says-
prepubescent sons. Ugh.
After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow's clothes again.
So he didn't even make her take the veil off.
That's what I keep thinking is like, he knew what she looked like, so this had to be like an elaborate disguise, or else it was a little kinkier than it describes. Like maybe
He
this
didn't know.
is the
He didn't
first
recognize her
glory hole.
voice. Like-
I don't think women were allowed to make noise during sex at that time,
Okay.
Jeremiah.
Has he ever heard her speak around the house before? Like, I feel like that would be.
She adopted that
She-
like Alec Baldwin's wife fake Spanish accent.
He's like, I feel like I've heard these grunts before in my home when she was scrubbing the floors. And he's like, but I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe
The
these
night
aren't
that my
familiar.
son died.
These wails and screams. Or maybe he's just not that good at sex and she's just laid there.
So she takes off home, and Judah gets to his herd, and he's like, all right, got to send payment, got to get my stick and my seal back. So it says, Judah sent the young goat by his friend, the Adulamite, Hira.
Dude, the trust here is
die.
actually unreal because she has, he can't make any deals or trades without this shit. And she has it. And he's like, yeah, I'll give you a goat. And she's like, cool. Let me just hold on to the most important documents that exist in your life until you give me that goat.
But it's
And
cool.
he's like, that makes sense. I definitely am not concerned about you holding me financially hostage.
No one had invented blackmail yet.
he
Like, yeah,
delegates to his
no
boy.
one-
He
no one
delegates to his
invented
boy. He's like,
blackmail.
here, you take the goat and go back. You've never met her before. I'm sure you'll find her quickly.
She's like, did I say one goat? Because I remember there being a 0 after that one. And he's like, oh, goddamn. How am I going to explain this one to my family?
You promised me 12 goats. Yeah, and so the kid, he doesn't know who she is or what she looks like. He just like goes to town and he's like, where's the shrine prostitute? And everybody's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, the prostitute, the one, the roadside prostitute. And they're like, there hasn't been any shrine prostitute here, dude. I don't know what you're talking about. So he went back to Judah and said, I didn't find her. Besides, the men who lived there said there hasn't been any shrine prostitutes here. Which you think that would be like bad news for Judah, that he would be really nervous and excited about that. But he's like, let her keep what she has or we will become a laughing stock. I guess that could be translated that way. He's like, let's just keep this real quiet, and I'll find a different stick.
Yeah. And signet. Would she have the signet or some shit like that too? Is that what it was?
Yeah. He's like, I
And
did
she's
send her this young goat, but you didn't find her. He's like, I tried. I tried. I honored the deal. She didn't.
meanwhile she's closing on like a high-rise hut with the ring.
She's like buying the first horse in the country.
He gets the bill for it.
He's like, where did you get that tall burro? So it says about 3 months later, Judah's hanging out, and somebody came up to him and said, "Hey, Judah, your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution, and as a result, she is now pregnant."
Which is interesting because I think, well, one, interesting because we got a timeline for the first time in this whole story. Two, you think Judah at any point was like, ooh,
I'll add a third,
Prostitute?
which is she's pregnant, therefore she must have prostituted herself. I
Well,
love
no,
that conclusion.
it seems like somebody's told her like she did. Well, that would have to
Like,
technically be
you
true,
think
right?
she went
Because she's
around telling people that? She was like,
no. I think what they're saying is she's obviously not with his son Shayla, so she is a widow and she's pregnant. Therefore, it must have been something like prostitution. At
right, it
least that's
couldn't
how
have
I
been
read it.
anything else. It couldn't have been all the other men in the world who are just like, I'll have sex.
Well, there's
with
only
that.
two options. There's marriage and prostitution.
No,
So
there was, and then there's also rape. That wasn't super uncommon, I'm sure.
right, marriage. There's marriage. And there's prostitution.
So, yeah, so it's like you're asking if he was self-aware enough to be like, oh, what is that
Like, oh,
about?
that sounds
Well, it
oddly
also
familiar.
just indicates that he has had sex with so many prostitutes.
Yeah.
But he has kind of the natural reaction that anybody would at this point. And it says, Judah
Should we
said,
be calling them
bring
sex
her out
workers?
and have her burned alive.
Perfect.
That's the response.
I mean,
Like, she had sex with someone, burn her alive. Which to me, okay, I think one moral qualm that I will lay at Judah's feet is, hey, you burn her alive, whatever, she's guilty, right? But that would kill the baby, wouldn't it?
Who's innocent?
God knew him in the
Whoa.
womb.
It's almost like
Hint.
they don't care
Oh,
about
well, to be fair, I
the
don't think the
unborn.
Bible ever tries to make it that Judah's a wonderful person, right? He's just
No.
a useful pawn in this whole thing.
But if God wanted to stop this, God would have intervened.
Nobody
Actually,
seems to
I don't
take
know.
issue
I
with
don't
that
know
part
the
of it
ending of the
either.
story. I do not recall, but knowing the way Bible stories end, my guess is that nobody pulled through for this temple prostitute.
Actually, I think this is a surprisingly feminist and empowering story.
Yeah, she does like the ultimate, like, she pwned him like a noob, you might say. It says, as she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. I am pregnant by the man who owns these, she said. And she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. And then cut to the gif of like all the black dudes in a circle, and they all go, oh! It's like the best gif ever.
Which makes you wonder, like, did she know that going into this whole thing? Like, was she thinking about that ahead of time? Like, she's watched them burn the
Oh.
whores before, and she's like, ooh.
Yeah, she's
I'm
long
sure
gone.
she knew the consequences.
She
Yeah.
knew.
Yeah. Have you
There's
guys
no
seen
way
that
she-
movie?
Fuck,
The
that's
Last
crazy
Duel?
to know and be like, I'm willing to risk my life for pregnancy. Have you guys seen the video or of I think it's on YouTube, of like a guy just reading people's, like, just writing the word pregnant wrong on comments?
Yes.
Yeah,
Her
like-
man-
It's so fucking
man.
funny.
yeah.
It gets funnier the more you listen to it. And I've listened to it a dozen times at this point, and it still comes up every like maybe 6 to 9 months where you're like, someone has to bring that video up, and you watch
to
the whole
tell if
thing straight
pregnant.
through. Pregnant. It's so funny. It's so funny.
It is good. Yeah, I'm sure she was pretty familiar with the consequences that this would bring if it was found out that she was, quote, guilty, you know? And it probably says a lot about like what she was resigned to if she just like accepted her fate as like a thrown away widow that's, you know, doomed to have that hanging around her head for the rest of her life. You know, twice widowed and childless probably means that there's not much future for her. So she risks it all and she scores, you know, the ultimate checkmate here. So Judah recognized them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Sheila." And he did not sleep with her again, which is an important way to end the story.
And it's over. Do you guys want to hear some of the Hebrew commentary on this, just for fun?
Oh, definitely.
Sure.
I, all right. Starting with the disguise, or Judah's loss of 2 sons and reluctance to surrender the third foreshadows the tragic situation of Jacob, who will soon lose Joseph and Simeon, or so it will appear to him, and refuse to surrender Benjamin, though he must surrender him if the family is to survive. The use of a disguise in pursuit of a purpose that conforms to the will of God, and, in this case, religious law, recalls Jacob's deceit in chapter 27. Note the echo of the preceding chapter, where a kid also played a key role in deceiving a parent. What I like about, honestly, the Hebrew interpretations of this is it's very story driven, in the way that you find parallels between each story. You see running themes that show up from like story to story to story to story, and it is pretty cool.
It's like a valuable take on it as opposed to like
What we got in evangelical Christian. Yes, the Hebrew take is genuinely like valuable, in provide. There's like a lot of cool concepts and meanings that you can extrapolate from it, and it can also give you a real appreciation for the way it's written. It's very stylized, and we don't need to get into any of that now, but it's very stylized, and the way they culminate to points is centered at in the middle of chapters versus like Western idea of like we're gonna find conclusions in the end and things like that. So there's a lot of cool stuff. But anyway, cult, prostitute, and prostitute are the same word in Hebrew. Many scholars doubt that cultic prostitution, as it is usually understood, existed in ancient Israel. A different term underlies quote unquote harlot in verses 15 and 24. Tamar's ostensible capital offense is not prostitution, but adultery. See Deuteronomy 22, 23 to 24. Since she is still in a state akin to betrothal to Judah's family. Adultery is the false charge in the next chapter as well. Examine these is identical in the Hebrew to please examine it in the previous chapter. There are, in fact, the only 2 instances of this expression in the Tanakh. Recognition, the same word in Hebrew, is a major theme in the Joseph story. Tamar's actions are justified in Judah's eyes, and in the eyes of the author, she ensured that the family line of Judah was preserved. A midrash in the Talmud sees Judah's Hebrew name, which includes every letter of the 4-letter name of the Lord, as a reward for his public confession of wrongdoing in this episode. According to 1 Chronicles 4:21, Shelah named his first son suggesting that Judah did finally release him to the first Ur's widow, Tamar. So like when you read the Jewish commentary, it's really dope the way that you can see things come full circle. Like there's a reason for names, there's a reason for what people do. It communicates something other than a surfacey reading of like, and that's why it's bad to cover your face with a veil and have sex with your father-in-law or whatever the fuck it.
oh
It's
yeah,
like,
dude. Here's what one of the pastors said about it that I was listening
I
to.
can't wait. It's so
Okay, because he started off the whole thing like I was saying earlier. He was like, you know, sometimes we wander off track. You know, I've been in Dallas driving before, and there's 6 lanes, and everybody's driving all crazy, and my GPS says that I need to be in the right lane, and I get off and I realize like this doesn't seem right. I'm on a service road, but my GPS, it doesn't understand yet that I'm not on the right road that I'm supposed to be on. So he takes that thread through, And this was how he concluded it. So after Judah is confronted by Tamar, he goes, Judah got off on the wrong track. But how did God correct him? With grace. With grace. God brought Judah back onto the right track. And I was thinking, like,
It's
he
like Chris
murdered two
Farley
of his
sketch.
sons and his wife.
Yeah.
Well, no. His wife died of natural causes at the age of 26.
I was gonna say, you think in your mind like, oh, she was probably they were probably old when she died, but like clearly not. I mean, they were like maybe 30. He was still young enough that he was able to like conceive a son.
Now, she could have died of something totally normal then, like getting one small scratch. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean anything untoward happened. Like, you could die for all kinds of great reasons.
You don't think that she was so wicked in the Lord's sight that he just like crushed her with a rock or something?
No, it would have probably called that out. She was like medium wicked, where she doesn't get a name, but she does get to have 3 sons, watch 2 of them die, and then die herself. It's a good life.
Yeah.
For a woman.
All things work together for good for those that love him. The only other thing that was really weird about this chapter is like towards the end, she ends up having twin boys. And I don't know if this is scientifically, like physically possible or not, but it says, as she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. So the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said, "This one came out first." But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out. And she said, "So this is how you have broken out." And he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was named Zerah.
From what I do know about childbirth, that seems unlikely.
He like reached around his bro and like ultimate punched his way forward. But
Like, is it possible for like, a baby's limb to come out and then be retracted back in during birth? Maybe. But
I
yeah, the
don't
whole
know
like
that
2 babies you have to get all the
unless
way
they're
back.
coming out like
Now,
fucking Superman flying through the sky, probably not.
I'm saying that's like maybe possible, but the baby back all the way up so another kid gets out first, I don't think that's ever
I think a
happened.
more likely story would be like they should have said that he reached his arm out, they tied a ribbon around his wrist, he pulled it back in, and the other brother took it off and tied it on his own wrist.
And
That
we
would
would
have
have
been
known that happened because it was written down in the Bible. Now, it's not uncommon for one of them to pencil dive their way out. So feet first would be what was expected. I don't think babies ever come out fist first. They don't.
I
He's got the
jackknifed
fucking
my way out.
baby comes out with the fucking Hulk hand on. Or remember the Terminator hand where you
Look,
could like hold
they-
up
they
the middle
tied-
finger? He comes
Right,
out
they tied
with
it
that.
around something. I don't know. They're just
What was it? Genghis Khan, Temujin supposedly came out holding a giant blood clot in his hand.
Did he really? Is that the story?
That's the story.
I mean that would be pretty gangster if that happened.
Yeah, that was
That's
like the
like when
foreshadowing.
Andrew Tate tells the story of like when he was born, he didn't even cry, not once. It's like, all right, dude.
He's like, and you know what they did? I didn't cry, and they held me. They held me upside down. They smacked my ass for hours, and I
Even as a
loved it.
baby, I was tough. A baby. It's like, all right.
What a fucking loser! What a lame
He
ass story to
sucks
tell.
so
I
bad.
didn't cry. I didn't cry. Oh my
Plug
god!
for the Behind the Bastards about Andrew Tate. It's a 4-part series. It's not bad.
Oh, I bet that's a good one.
Turns out
We
he
can't go
sucks.
on. We cannot
Oh,
go on
really?
an Andrew Tate tangent.
Oh my god. So yeah, that is the story of Judah and Tamar. And every pastor goes to great lengths afterwards to talk about how like, after all of this, like this is a turning point in Judah's life, and it sort of sets the stage for his righteous stand that he takes when they meet up with Joseph down the road in Egypt. And he basically like offers himself instead of his brother Benjamin. So yeah, that
Thus
interesting.
saith the Lord.
Yep. So
I
yeah,
hope you've all
I
been
guess,
enriched.
yep. And Don't take our word for it. Dive into the word yourself.
Yeah,
You know, come
definitely
to your own
don't. You look,
conclusions.
read the Bible on your own. I feel like that's the one message that we all got was, look, you can listen to your pastor say it, but you that's the premise of evangelical Christianity, is that you can pick up the book and understand it by yourself in a vacuum. And that's why evangelicalism sucks so bad. So just keep going with it.
You know, just keep in mind, like, my motto that I wrote, which is, you know, ask questions, make mistakes, and get messy.
You
I
and
don't know
Andrew
what
Tate
that's
do have
about.
a lot in common.
That was Miss Frizzle, you tool.
Yeah, don't you sully Miss Frizzle's good name like that.
Well, turns out we should all be a little bit more skeptical of Miss Frizzle then.
I don't think that's a bad way to go.
I mean, she did take the entire class up Frankie's asshole at one point.
Oh, all
She's
right, you're making
in
some
a
good.
child's
You're making some
colon.
better points. Yeah, I wasn't on board at first, but that's a pretty good point. Problematic to say the least.
My favorite part was the scene where the bus goes into the Cheerio, and you're like, oh wow, that's really cool. And you're like, oh, that was a sphincter.
I don't remember this. This trauma has
I
been
might be making
successfully
some of this up.
suppressed.
You can't really. I mean, I would not take my word for anything at this point. I'm just saying it was a weird episode, and I've seen clips that do make me feel
All right,
weird
so now I'm
in
googling.
hindsight.
Does Miss Frizzle?
I don't think they went into the butt. I think they got barfed out or burped out or something
No,
like
there's a
that
sphincter.
instead.
There is a sphincter in an episode of
Well, your body
Magic
has
School
multiple
Bus.
sphincters, dude.
I don't think that's a real memory, Sam. Although there is a harddrive.net article about Miss Frizzle fired after sending school bus of children up guy's ass. That's a satire article. It's good.
All right. Well, anyway, you don't have
If
to ignore everything I just said. I'm making shit up at this point.
Sam's like, I know what I saw.
If you're enjoying the show, leave us a review wherever you listen to it. We would greatly appreciate it. And you should join our Discord. Our Discord I feel like it gets cooler all the time. There's a great group of people in there. Anytime you see a ridiculous bumper sticker, road sign, or, talk to your grandma, you can you can tell us about the ridiculous things that they said. You can find a link to that. We got a link tree in our Instagram bio. So go there and join the Discord. If you don't have a Discord, just make one. It's not a big deal. You don't have to spend all day on there, but it's actually like one of the cooler social media type platforms, I think. We've got like I said, we got some big guests coming up. So stay tuned. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss those announcements. And yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.